Welcome to Hike Point of Sale. In this video we'll be covering how to integrate Hike into the Magento e-commerce platform. Now Hike offers a built-in integration directly through to Magento, and connecting this will allow you to seamlessly integrate your customers' data, your product data, your sales data, as well as your inventory information across between the two platforms. Now before we begin the integration, there are a few important things to note. The first thing is that Hike integrates with Magento versions 2.3 and above. So you do need to check and make sure that your Magento version is current. So to do this, all you need to do is to log into your Magento administration area. And in your Magento administration area, at the bottom of every page, on the bottom right hand side, you'll see here Magento version listed. If the version is under 2.3, you will need to get in contact with Magento or your developer in order to upgrade the Magento version from there. Now the next thing we want to do is to ensure that the tax rates and the tax rules that are applied to sales of your products are reflected in both Hike and Magento. So in order to do this, we want to define the tax rules that will be set up. So in your Hike store, you need to go to your store setup and then to your tax rules area. And when you select this, the default tax options in Hike are a no tax and a GST. So you need to make sure that any tax rates that are assigned over in your Hike store are reflected and mapped to your Magento store correctly. So as you can see here, by default we have the no tax and GST, and other tax rates may apply depending on your region. Now the next thing we want to do is to log into your Magento administration area. And once you've logged in, you should reach a screen here which you can get to by selecting the Stores button and selecting Tax Rules. So we need to make sure that the taxes listed here are match up with what's defined in our Hike store. So we've created a no tax rule here already, which is going to be applied for the no tax area, but we'll also show you how to create a new tax rule. So if you select the add new tax rule button, and in our Hike store we had a GST rate here. So if we select the GST rate quickly and select edit, we can see here that it's been identified as GST, and you can assign the country and such and region as required depending on what your tax rates need to be applied for what area, and the tax rate itself, which is 10%. You can also add new tax rates as required depending on the region again. So if we just define this tax rule quickly, ensure that the tax rate is selected to the one that we're after. Now there's a drop down here called additional settings, so if we click this, we can now define additional rules for this tax rate in Magento. In particular, what we're after is the product tax class, because this is what will show up in the mappings area in Hike when you're connecting between Hike and Magento. So what we want to see here is, again, we can use the defined auto default, which is taxable goods, or we can either edit the name or add a new tax class. So if you select the add new tax class, you can just type in a new name and then save it as required. So we'll be using the default taxable goods for GST, but we may edit this and we'll mark it down as GST so it's clear, and we'll just select save. From there, we can leave the default priority and sort order, and all we need to do is select the save rule button. And now, as you can see here, we have both the no tax and the GST tax rules applied. So these will match up with your Hike's tax rules, and we can proceed from here. The next thing we want to ensure is that if you're bringing any data across from Hike or from Magento, is that all the data is neat and tidy beforehand. So we want to make sure things like products do not have duplicate barcodes or SKUs. In Hike, SKUs and barcodes are what's known as unique identifiers, so you can't have duplicates for these in any of your products. If you do have duplicates, what will happen is when you try to sync the data across, you'll get sync errors that will tell you to that the duplicates have been detected, and you'll need to address them in order to have these products syncing across. So similarly, like product names, if you want to make sure everything's updated, making sure all this information is updated in the platform that you have. That way, when the sync is first turned on, it will sync all this data through, and you'll have neat and tidy data in the other platform as well. Now, once the integration is turned on, any modifications to your data, such as editing product information, will get reflected across in the other platform. So before you do anything, we do recommend as well that you take backups of your existing data before the integration's turned on. If you need to take backups of any data in Hike, please get in contact with our Hike support team by selecting the Need Help button and selecting Chat with Support. If you need to take backups of any data in Magento, please contact your developer that developed your Magento platform. The last thing we want to highlight before we start the integration process is that any third-party plugins or integrations that you have set up outside of Hike with Magento can affect the data that's being synced across. So for instance, if you have a plugin that's editing product information separately, that information will then get synced across to Hike, and it may cause data discrepancies. So please make sure to test any existing integrations or plugins that you have thoroughly, and make sure that they won't affect the integration with Hike. Once again, if you need further information, feel free to get in contact with Hike, as well as your Magento developer if required. Also note that if these third-party plugins or integrations do add custom information to your products or your other information in Magento, this information will not get synced across from Hike. Hike will only be syncing with the standard information that's provided as part of the Magento platform. So now that we're ready to begin integrating between Hike and Magento, we need to go over to your administration area of Magento again. And what we need to do is to select the system button here on the left and select integrations. So this is going to bring you through to the integrations listing of Magento. And we need to select the button on the top right here for adding a new integration. So once this comes up, we can name the integration as required. And we can leave the other three fields blank as they're not required. Now you do need to verify your identity, so typing in the password if it's not filled in automatically for the user that's signed in. And the next thing we need to do is select the API button on the left here. Now, depending on your developer's requirements, you may want to have custom permissions available for this, but for the purposes of this video, we'll assume that you do have full permissions. So to do this, all we need to do for the resource access is to select this button and select all. Now, all we need to do from here is to select the save button, which is going to create the integration that we've provided. So you can see here the Hike-Magento integration is currently inactive still. So the last thing we need to do is simply click on the activate button to activate this integration. So once again, it will prompt you to confirm that you want to provide full API access to the Magento system. And if we select the allow button, it's now going to generate the integration tokens for us. In particular, the token that we're after is this access token here. So if we select done, we now know that the access token has been generated for the Magento integration. So what we need to do is to now go over to your Hike store. And in your store setup and your integrations area of your Hike store, you'll see here that there's a Magento integration option here. So if you do require further assistance, we do have a support article as well, which is here, and you can select it for the how-to on how to connect the Magento integration. So what we want to do is to go over to the right and select the activate button. And this is going to bring you over to a window here where you type in the shop URL as well as the access token. Now just be aware when you're connecting to Magento, you do need to make sure the shop URL is correct. So you're copying this from your Magento's integration and administration access area. So if we go over to our Magento page quickly and copy the URL, and from there we'll also copy over the access token. And if we simply select connect, this is going to slowly process the details. And after a few seconds, you'll see here that you'll reach the Magento configuration page in Hike. Now that we've reached the Magento management area for the integration, we need to fill out a bunch of items in order to get the integration connected. So the first thing we want to assign is the Magento attribute set and a Magento product SKU for custom sales. Now for the purposes of this video, we will just assume that we'll be using the default attribute set. If you require further assistance or information about the attribute set, you can go over to our Hike support article by going over to the Magento area and selecting the how-to article. So from here, we'll assign the default attribute set. And then the next thing we want to do is to create a custom SKU that Magento will assign when you're syncing your Hike sales orders over to Magento. This is the product they will use to itemize the item in Magento. So to do this, we need to go over to your Magento administration area again. And in the catalogs and the products area, you can then add a product and create a custom sale product. So that when a custom sale is assigned to a Hike order and it's synced across to Magento, this is what will be displayed in the Magento sales order. So if we select the edit quickly, we can just have a look. It doesn't need to have any pricing or quantity information assigned, but it has to be an enabled product here. So if we go back, we can see here that we've created this and we've listed the SKU as CS. So going back to your Magento product area, we can just type in CS here. The next thing we need to assign is the Hike register for payments. So if we tick this option and we select the Waverley register option, just be aware that for e-commerce platforms, Hike does recommend that you create a separate register that processes e-commerce payments separately. This way it doesn't affect any retail payments that and sales that you make, as you can get duplicate invoices or mismatches in data from there. So we do recommend that you create a separate register for your e-commerce integration, but for the purposes of this video, we'll be assigning a standard register here. The next thing we want to do is to assign the tax rates. So as defined earlier, we created specific tax rates for the no tax and GST options in Hike. And once again, if you do have other tax rates available for your region or your country, you'll need to make sure that it's defined here and it's matched up to the Magento tax. So as we see here, we select the drop down button. This will bring any Magento tax information from Magento. So as we defined earlier, we created a no tax option, as well as for the GST taxable goods, we marked down as GST. So now we can see here that the mappings between the Hike tax rules and the Magento tax rules are connected. The next thing we want to do is to define the inventory settings. So if we select here, we only have one outlet for this particular demonstration. If you have multiple outlets, you can define them as required. And this way, when sales are made between Magento, it will deduct the inventory accordingly from these particular outlets. The next thing we want to do is to assign the sync settings for Magento to Hike, as well as Hike to Magento. So in this case, for any information that's syncing from Magento, this will get sent through to Hike. So at the very least, generally you want to manage your inventory within Hike, as we have a robust inventory management system with inventory stock takes and purchase orders here. So if you select this option, any order that's created in Magento will update the inventory in Hike accordingly. Next thing we want to do is we want to send the full Magento order from Hike and save it in Hike. That way you can manage the sales order within Hike and manage all the inventory information. So depending on your business requirements, you can have this turned on and off. And lastly, again, if you manage your products within Magento and you want to continue managing your products within Magento, you also want to select this option so that it will send new products that you create in Magento over to Hike. The same options apply from Hike to Magento. So once again, at the very least, we want to select the option to update inventory in Magento when a sale, purchase order, or inventory stock take is created in Hike. This way, if there's any updates to the inventory, it will get reflected over on your eCommerce Magento store. Secondly, again, if you want to manage your products within Hike, you can send any new products that you create within Hike over to Magento. And then lastly, again, if you do manage your purchase order, your sales orders within Magento, you can select this option to send the full Hike orders that are placed, and you'll see the Hike sales orders in Magento sales history. So again, if you select this last option, we do make a disclaimer that we recommend that you disable this feature and you control your purchase and your sales within Hike. The last two things is also basically syncing for product descriptions as well as product images. Now with product descriptions, Hike doesn't display any HTML markups, so things like bold for the product description, italics, or any images that you may have embedded won't show up within Hike, but some e-commerce applications do allow you to show these markups and edit your product description accordingly. So in these cases, we do recommend that you manage your product descriptions directly within the e-commerce platform to ensure all the markups are displayed and you can control that. And similarly for product images, Hike displays product images in a square and a 500 by 500 pixel fashion. Now this will suit Hike's requirements, but it may not be suitable for all websites, as some e-commerce platforms do have custom imaging requirements. So once again, you want to double check your imaging and otherwise contact your developer for Magento and double check that the images will show up correctly. Otherwise, we do recommend that you do manage your product images from Magento directly as well and only sync those images across to Hike from there. So once these options are all selected and assigned, we can now select continue, which is going to bring you over to the first time sync for your information. So from here, you can sync your customers and your product and inventory information and send it from Hike to Magento or from Magento to Hike. This will depend, as mentioned earlier, as to where you have your point of truth and where all your product information is assigned already. For a brand new installation, in most cases, you'll have your information within Magento and you want to bring it over to Hike. So you can select these as you need to. So in our case here, we'll be selecting Hike to Magento as we have existing product information already, and we'll be syncing it across to Magento. So all we need to do is select the Save and Sync Now button, and it'll say done, you're awesome. And if we wait a couple of minutes for the information to sync across, we can then check if the information has been synced correctly. So in order to check that the sync is working, what we'll do is we'll edit a product quickly that was set to be e-commerce disabled currently. So if you go to your Hike store, go to your products area and search for a product. In this case, we've got an example product called milk. And we can see here that the sync is currently marked as red, which means it's not syncing through. The reason for this is if we open up the product, there's a sales channel that's listed here. And we can see here that the e-commerce has been unselected, which means that it's not syncing this product over to the e-commerce platform currently. So if we select this option, what you can see here is a warning will appear to make sure that you are wanting to sync this product through to the e-commerce platform. So once again, depending on if you've got a one-way sync to the product or if you've got two-way syncing, it also double checks to make sure that your stock levels are correct. So please ensure that you do want to sync this product through to your e-commerce platform and that all the information is correct before proceeding. So if we select continue, the last thing we need to do is now to select save here. So if we, just before we save this, we'll go over to our e-commerce products and just double check in Magento that the product is not there currently. So to do this, we'll go over to our Magento administration area again. And in the catalog area, we can select products, which will bring you over to this product listing screen here. So if we search by milk quickly, just to double check, we can see here that it's not currently available within Magento. So if we go over to your Hike store once more, as we see here, we've got the e-commerce button selected now. And the last thing we need to do is select save. Once this is done, the automatic sync process will now attempt to trigger the sync. So if we select this red icon here, we can see here that there's now Hike to Magento is now created and it's triggered a sync. This will occur for any edits we make to the product as well. So if we refresh this page quickly, we can see here that the sync is now marked as green, which means that the item has been synced correctly over to the Magento platform. So once again, if we go over to the Magento products area and we refresh the page here as well for the search for the milk item, what occurs now, we can see that the item has been synced across to Magento correctly. So that concludes how to manage your Magento integration with Hike. If you do require any further assistance, once again, feel free to go over to your store setup integrations area. And once again, in the Magento area, you can go through the how-to article on how to manage the Hike and Magento integration. You can also go over to the Need Help area on the top right here and select Chat with Support to speak to our 24/7 support team. Or if it's a more technical issue, you can also submit a ticket from there. Thank you for your time.